Drive Time on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Zurich. When family is all that matters, make sure they're protected. Visit zurich.ie to learn more about life and serious illness cover.
Now, the hospitality industry representatives and government officials met again this afternoon to thrash out a way to reopen indoor dining safely. I'm joined now by two people who attended the meeting this afternoon: Adrian Cummins, CEO of the Restaurants Association, and Pádraig Cribben, CEO of the Vintners Federation. And thank you both for joining us. Pádraig, I'll come to yourself first. So in this meeting then with government officials this afternoon, I understand that primary legislation, it was noted, will be needed to put in place a new system, get the premises open for hospitality. Can you tell us more about what that will involve?
Yes, Sarah. Well, at our meeting on Monday, we asked the question, were the proposals that they were making legally sound in the context that our members would be safeguarded against any claims, whether it be on a GDPR basis, an equality basis, a discrimination basis or whatever. And we were told today that in order for us to be legally sound, that primary legislation will be required. We understand that that's going to be considered by Cabinet on Tuesday of next week, and that then action will be taken. That would obviously, if primary legislation is required, it would have to be done next week because the Dáil rises at the end of next week. So it's a tight time frame.
It's a very tight time frame because it would have to go through the Dáil and the Seanad, all the committee stages, all of that.
And be signed by the President.
And did you get a sense from government officials that they felt that was doable?
We got that sense, but I mean, really now where we're at is there are six options going to government there are six options going to government on Tuesday. Government have to make decisions, and it really is down to political will because, you know, we need to be open on July the 19th as a matter of course, because, you know, the summer is going, and it is very important that we get premises opened as soon as is possible.
We were speaking to Ciara Phelan from the Irish Mirror earlier today. She was attending a press conference at which the Taoiseach was speaking, and she said she was asking him about whether he could give a commitment that indoor hospitality would open on the 19th, and he wouldn't. He said a plan would be in place by the 19th, but he wouldn't commit to the plan being put into action on the 19th. Now, he wasn't ruling it out either, but he wasn't committing to it.
We have been very clear that July 19th is required.
And have you got any commitment on that?
No, we haven't got that at this point in time. No, even though we pushed today, we haven't got that.
And what is your sense of it, Pádraig? Do you think it's feasible? Because today is the 8th.
It's doable, Sarah, if the political will is there to make it happen. We think it's doable, and the political will be tested over the next week to 10 days.
OK, so six options going to Cabinet next Tuesday. What is the most likely outcome of that, do you think, in terms of the option that will put into practice?
It looks like the most likely outcome will be one that will include a combination of those that are vaccinated and are recovered.
OK, so would that be via the use of the digital COVID cert?
Along those lines, yes.
And I know we were speaking to you on Monday, as you said, about all of this, and you had concerns about the legalities of it, but you also had concerns about dealing with customers and turning customers away.
Absolutely. The legality issue is being addressed. We still have some issues on how it, and some of the issues we had around the workings of it will be addressed in the legal stuff as well. So, you know, it's not, in our view, it's not the optimal outcome. It's not the one we want, but you know, it may be the only one that we have to get our members open in the short term, and that's imperative.
So you will accept this, a digital COVID cert, only allowing vaccinated people or recovered people into pubs indoors in the short term?
Obviously, we've got to see the final detail, but government will make those decisions. And
do you have any understanding at this point about what might happen for tourists who arrive with a negative PCR test?
Our understanding is that a tourist who arrives with a negative PCR test will not be allowed to have indoor drinking or dining.
Will not be allowed to have indoor drinking or dining, really? Even though we're opening up hospitality or a travel on the 19th?
Absolutely.
And what does that mean for your industry? I mean, this is a big part of...
It means a lot of confusion, Sarah. So it's not an easy scenario that we're finding ourselves in.
Although the tourists, if they have a digital travel cert, a COVID cert, they may be able to get in.
They will be in a different ballpark.
Okay, so Europeans effectively, but you may find yourself in a situation where people from the UK, you'd be having to turn away because they wouldn't be under the European digital COVID cert.
That may very well be. These are some of the things that need to be addressed.
Right, okay. I know you have to go, Pádraig, but just very briefly in terms of the pubs inside, what will that look like if this all goes ahead? Will there be any other social distancing measures in place?
We believe that it'll probably be under the regulations that are there. We're waiting for clarity on that.
Sorry, what do you mean, the way things were set up before this, is it?
In other words, that the social distancing measures will still be in place.
All right. Pádraig Cribben, thank you very much for joining us and for giving us that time. We're joined also, as I said, by Adrian Cummins from the Restaurants Association. Adrian, I might start with that issue of tourists actually first, because that's going to be a big issue with for businesses all around Ireland in the summer season with international travel finally open. Do you expect you'll be turning away people from the UK?
Good evening, Sarah. Well, that was an issue that was raised this afternoon with government officials. It is a public health matter. It'll be up to the government now to talk to NPHET to see is there a workaround to try and help those people that are coming in with a negative PCR test to be able to dine and drink indoors in hospitality facilities. So that's one of those issues that we need to get resolved over the weekend. We're in a more positive nature now with regard to getting a deal over the line ahead of the cabinet meeting, but the window of opportunity is very tight now to get politicians to vote for this in the Dáil next week. But huge amount of progress has been done by the officials, and there will be bilateral negotiations with the industry bodies right through the weekend to tease out more matters. But I want to be very clear, this is not the perfect scenario, but it is a scenario that gets doors open, or else we are kept closed until September.
Okay. Of course, it's just after occurring to me that you could also have people who are vaccinated from the UK or from the US outside of the European Union who wouldn't have access to a digital COVID cert, but would have perhaps some sort of documentation to prove that they're fully vaccinated. Is that something that would be accepted by restaurants, or would be allowed to be accepted by restaurants?
Well, that's a matter now for the government officials to tease out with public health, and it did come up in conversation during our meeting how that would be structured. And you know, we have to work around the NPHET parameters. NPHET are the kingmakers in all of this. They put forward to the government in their letter last week how indoor hospitality could reopen. We're trying to develop a system or a piece of legislation now that allows us to do this. As I say, it's not going to be perfect, but it can be built on in the future. But our focus now is to get doors open on the 19th of July, get 180,000 people back to work as soon as possible.
Okay. So on the 19th of July, at the moment, it will be probably something based on the digital COVID cert, fully vaccinated people or recovered people allowed in the doors of restaurants. What will it look like inside the doors? Will it still be limited in terms of numbers, social distancing, a limited timeline?
Yes, there will be guidelines. They will be updated in advance of reopening. A lot of work will happen next week to get those guidelines out. The time limit, obviously that's a matter for public health, what they say. It didn't come up in conversation today around the timeline as such, but social distancing will be in place. And also we need to tease out, which is a very critical one for families and family units with kids under 18. How do we work around this? And I think we've put forward a suggestion that subject to public health, that there could be an extra maybe social distance measure to allow family units indoors, so that we can have a summer to look forward to and actually save part of the summer for these families on holidays across the state.
So what would that look like, that families would be even further away from everybody else, is it?
Well, if public health deem that under 18s are unvaccinated and possibly there are potential risk, we don't know until the government officials talk to public health about that. We want to try and get a solution in place for the 19th that we don't exclude family units, and possibly that an extra an upgrade to the guidelines may be in place to allow family units yet. But that's a matter for public health.
It's funny, you've mentioned that, Adrian, a couple of times, public health, and yet we heard from the Taoiseach today that NPHET are not going to be consulted again on this, that NPHET have had their say and it's up to government to interpret what they've said. But is it your understanding that NPHET will be consulted again?
Well, when we entered into this process, we were of the opinion that if we needed extra advice around the proposals that NPHET had put forward, they could be consulted on those parameters. Can we move outside those parameters? I doubt it very much. NPHET were very clear in their letter to the government, but let's just say we want clarification around the parameters that NPHET have put forward.
Okay, so and have you put a proposal on the table, for example, that a family of 4 would sit 4 metres apart from everybody else in the restaurant, and would this be acceptable on public health grounds? Have you put forward some such proposal?
We haven't put down any distance for family units separated. What we've said is very clearly is how can we try and accommodate family units safely within public health, within a restaurant environment for indoor dining. That's what we've requested from government officials, and that's now a matter for public health to try and come up with a solution for us within the NPHET parameters. Okay,
I know there's going to be a phased approach to all of this reopening, and your statement today after the discussion mentioned ventilation, CO2 monitors. What role will they play? When will they have to be in place?
So, to be very clear to your listeners, there is a ventilation guidelines within the current Fáilte Ireland guidelines developed by the Health and Safety Authority that all businesses should adhere to. It's very clear what those are. We've also recommended from our perspective that CO2 monitors should be introduced into premises. They're very low cost to buy, but they can have huge practical implications for our businesses to protect our customers and our staff. And most importantly is about mask wearing for both staff internally in hospitality and those moving from their table to the toilets. We have to make sure that when we reopen our doors, we do it properly, correctly and safely to protect our staff and our customers.
What about the role of antigen testing?
That will come in the next phase or phases. Obviously, there's a working group set up by the Department of Health. So antigen testing and PCR testing will be looked at. It won't be in the first phase on the 19th. We're not there yet, but it will be looked at down the road. So let's just say it's still on the table. It hasn't been stroked off.
Okay. And this will all be supervised by the HSA, the Health and Safety Authority, which I believe don't have a whole lot of staff now to be doing this on top of all their other duties. I mean, maybe that's not something that would concern you.
To be clear, Sarah, it's not just the HSA. You'll have, as government officials have said to us, it'll be both HSA, environmental health officers, and also Fáilte Ireland inspections, also to make sure that the guidelines are being implemented. These will be on a spot check basis. It's been done already across the state, and if there are breaches of guidelines, they will be dealt with like in other sectors, like in the retail sector where files have gone to DPP. So we want to make sure that we have a system in place that gives confidence to the consumer and the public that we're doing the right thing. And so we're very clear that we're in this with the government to make sure we get our industry back open safely.
We have a text here, Adrian, from a listener saying if children are allowed into restaurants, as you have asked for that to be allowed, if children are allowed into restaurants, how can they stand over excluding anyone else? Why would people in their 20s be literally the only ones prevented from enjoying their holidays? And I mean, you could end up with that situation, maybe not just people in their 20s, but 20s to mid-30s perhaps, that small bunch of people who will be in a situation where they haven't had any vaccinations or aren't fully vaccinated, being the only people not allowed in.
Well, to repeat the point again, Sarah, we have to work within the NPHET letter to the government. That's where we have to work within. We've asked, there's a range of options on the table. They'll go to the government on ahead of the cabinet meeting. To me, it's very clear there's only a combined two options together that will get our doors open from the 19th. We can build on that in the future. We have to be a bit more positive now about getting our industry back open. This is the only show in town to get our doors open.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us, Adrian Cummins, CEO of the Restaurants Association.